Look at the edges of this garment. This is the Juni Hitoe, the pinnacle of Japanese aristocratic fashion, defined by its massive volume and visual complexity. Court noblewomen wore up to 12 separate, unstarched silk robes simultaneously, carrying the physical weight of all those layers at once. But if you strip all of that away and go back to the ancient Yayoi period, around the 10th century BC, you find a very different starting point. People wore a simple, purely functional piece of rough cloth. It had a central hole cut for the head and was tied at the waist, essentially an unstitched poncho known as a kandui. The mystery is how an island nation went from wearing a single unstitched sheet to engineering the most meticulously layered, complex silk garments in human history. The first step toward structured clothing arrived during the Kofun period, starting in the 3rd century AD. We start to see the introduction of basic stitching. The wardrobe split into defined pieces, kinubakama, or trousers for men, and kinumo, or skirts for women. These are haniwa, terracotta figures found in burial mounds from this era. You can clearly see a structured, rounded neckline on the upper torso. At this stage, clothing in Japan was strictly functional. The elaborate cultural aesthetics that would later define Japanese fashion did not exist yet. In the 7th century, the Japanese court deliberately imported Chinese imperial culture. It was a calculated move to centralize their own political power. They instituted a strict regime of dress. This Takamatsuzuka tomb wool painting shows the mandated style: straight collars and skirts with rigid, multicolored vertical pleats. New textile technologies also arrived. Complex patterns appeared on upper garments, enabled by imported clamp-resist and wax-resist dyeing. Many of these advanced textiles and official state garments were sealed for protection in the Shosoin repository, giving us a pristine record of the materials. The Nara period introduced high-end materials and structure, but the resulting aesthetic was stiff and starched, a rigid mimicry of a foreign empire rather than an expression of native Japanese identity. That changed during the Heian period, spanning from 794 to 1185. Japan severed its cultural reliance on China and turned its focus entirely inward. They rejected the stiff, starched Chinese robes. In their place came neisozoku, garments made of unstarched, highly drapable, soft fabrics. The male silhouette expanded dramatically, featuring a wide-sleeved top called a kariginu, paired with incredibly voluminous pants known as sasinuki. Women underwent a similar transformation with the kariginumo. They abandoned rigid pleats for wide, sweeping layers that dragged across the floor. By stripping away foreign stiffness, Japanese aristocrats created a completely new physical canvas based entirely on softness, on extreme volume, and on layering. When we look again at the fully constructed court dress, we are looking at a meticulously engineered cultural object. Notice the edges of the sleeve, where the colored layers are staggered with millimeter precision. These layered silk inner robes are called the uchiki. Their staggered edges were designed specifically to be viewed as a single, cohesive color palette. As this diagram shows, specific combinations of these silk colors were strictly coordinated. A pale green over pink, for example, signaled spring cherry blossoms, allowing the wearer to reflect seasonal transitions, local flora, and poetic moods. These layers provided absolutely zero physical utility or function for movement within the high-end aristocratic society. Your mastery of this complex color aesthetic was the ultimate visible proof of your intellect and your social worth. In a few centuries, the Japanese wardrobe moved from the purely functional yayoi poncho through the rigid technological mimicry of China to the hyper-refined Heian layers. They retained the raw textile technology of the mainland, but rewrote the rules of its application. The long evolution of Japanese dress is the ultimate physical manifestation of an island culture finally finding its own distinct voice. They took the basic human need for covering and turned it into an exquisite, layered canvas of philosophical and personal expression.